Alright, CNT120, Chapter 4 Lab. We're going to look at a bunch of protocols in this lab. So we'll break it up into pieces. We're going to do some looking at Ethernet headers, some ARP, some UDP, TCP, some IP4, IP6, and then a couple of our troubleshooting commands. Okay, so first part here, I downloaded a copy of my Chapter 4 Lab. I have that ready to go. I am going to use the VM, Linux VM a couple times, so I have booted my VMware workstation. So over here, VMware, once I load that little program here, in this case I loaded the 125 Mint. We're just using that generic Linux Mint VM, so I have that booted. And the first part of the lab here, I say make sure that both your Windows machine and your Linux VM are set for dynamic IP addressing. So real quickly on my Windows machine, I'm going to go to my internet settings here, and I'm going to make sure my patch cable is connected to the college, which I'm over there visually looking at it now, and it is. And I'm going to go to the IP4 properties and make sure it's set for obtain IP address automatically. So that is good. So my Windows is good, and if I do a command prompt here, ipconfig, I should see that I'm getting a 172 from the college. So I know my Windows is good. Over on my Linux, I'll go down here to my little network icon, go to network settings, and I'm going to look for the same 172. If I don't see that, remember, use the little wrench icon here. What I would do is I would turn my NIC off, use the little wrench icon, go in here to IP4 and make sure it's not on manual, make sure it's on automatic. Apply that and then come back and turn your NIC on and give it a second to pick up an IP, and I am seeing a 172.21. And again, I can verify that using my command prompt down here, do an ifconfig, and I'll see this getting a 172.21. So I know both are the PC is connected to the college network, and I know both are set for dynamic, and they're getting a 172 address. All right, so I want to take note of both of my machines. If I look at my Linux machine here, here is the MAC address of the Linux machine, and here's the IP. So I want to make sure I can find those. On my Windows machine, I would need an ipconfig/all. I'm going to scroll up here to Ethernet 3. Here is my hardware address or my MAC address for this one, and then here's the IP for this one, IP4 address right there. So I made sure both are set for dynamic, and I can find both the MAC and IP on each of them. So what I'm going to do now is, on my Linux PC, I'm going to issue a ping to the Windows, and I'm going to capture that using Wireshark. So here is my Windows PC. There is the IP, 172.21.40.124. So over here on Linux, I will do a ping and make sure that's working. 172.21.40.124. 40.124, and I'm just going to make sure it's working, and it is. I'm going to do a Control-C. That'll stop my ping, so I know it's working. Now that I know it's working, over here on Windows, I'll start my Wireshark. So there's my Wireshark. I'm going to use the Ethernet 3 NIC. I will launch that, and then I'm going to reissue this ping from Linux so that I get a couple pings going to the Windows machine. Handful's good. I'll stop that, Control-C over here. I'll go over to my Windows machine and do a stop. So I now sent a couple pings from the Linux machine to the Windows, and I captured those. So what I'm going to do now, just on the Windows machine on Wireshark, I'm going to apply a filter. This is an interesting filter. We're going to apply a filter so that we just see stuff destined for the MAC address of the Windows machine. So I'm going to look at the MAC address of my Windows machine. There it is right there, 1866DA. And I'm going to copy that. I will highlight that, and I'll hit the Control-C. I'll copy that. Up here in Wireshark, I'm going to use a filter called eth.dst, so in other words, destination Ethernet address, and it's going to be equal. There's two equals there. So eth.dst equal. And now I'm going to paste this in, but unfortunately, actually it does accept it. I was going to say we might need to put in the colons up here. I'll try that as it is. If I have weird characters in there, let me put some X's in there. You'll see the bar turns red. So it actually is okay with that. So we're going to hit enter. And now we're just seeing anything that had the destination address, destination MAC address of the Windows machine. That's an interesting little filter. So I'm now seeing just stuff destined for this Windows machine. Anything destined for this Windows machine. Okay, so now that I have those, let's take a look closer at the Ethernet header. We went with the destination, source, and type field. So I'll highlight one of these, and I'm going to look down here in the middle window that shows the contents of, and we're going to open up the Ethernet header. So we have the destination address of 1866DA. That's this machine right here. That's the one this is our Windows machine. And then the source is our VMware, the VMware Linux machine. And the type field says IP4 because an IP4 packet is inside. An IP4 packet, if you will, is inside. So there's my Ethernet header fields. Okay. All right. So there is my Ethernet header field. So I've looked at my Ethernet header with these ping messages. Now I'm going to start capturing my results from this lab. So I'm going to open up a notepad file. And I'm going to put a note up here that this is like CNT120, Chapter 4 Lab. And I'm going to say this is Part 1, my Ethernet header. And I am going to save this file. I'll do a save as, and I'm going to put it right on my desktop. Actually, I'll use the documents folder. That way I can find it. And I'm going to say 120, Chapter 4 Lab. And I'll call this Windows, because I am going to capture some stuff on the Linux side. So there, 120 Chapter 4 Lab Windows. And I'll do a save. Now I have that file created. Now I'm going to copy the contents of the Ethernet header fields, the destination, source, and type fields. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy the destination. Let's try to copy that. Actually, we'll do it this way. I'm going to open this packet this way, and we're going to try to copy this destination field. So let's try to do copy value and see if that works for us. We'll paste that in. There we go. That's my destination address. And I'll put a note here of destination Ethernet address. And then we want the next field, which is the source address. We'll copy this value. Actually, let's try to do copy. Let's do all visible. Let's see if that works. And we'll paste that in. Ooh, that's everything. All right. So we're going to cut some out. There we go. That makes it a little bit better. Oh, that was a better copy. That was a better copy, Mr. Brown. So now we have the three fields I'm actually looking for. So I learned something new today. So if I come in here, I can do copy. I'll say all visible items, and that allowed me to literally copy all of that, and I can just pull out of here what I don't want, which was these things at the beginning and these things at the end. And now I have all those header fields. That was my Ethernet header fields. All right, looking good. I will save that, and now I have my Ethernet header fields from the Ethernet part of our lab. We'll come back in the next one, and we'll move on to ARP.